Thank you so much. I'm so excited. It's such a pleasure for me to be here in the midst of all of this talent and all of these people of goodwill. It really does make me feel good. Seth, you're doing a wonderful job, exactly what you set out to do.
Thank you, Sonia.
You may or may not have heard that I've retired from Sesame Street. I casually mentioned my retirement as a segue into talking about my memoir at the American Librarians Association conference in San Francisco in July last year. The teachers and librarians tweeted that information, and by the time I got back to the East Coast, my retirement had become national news. People continue to ask me why I retired from Sesame Street, and of course I tell them, but since this is such a special group of people here at Town Hall this evening, I think I will tell you all the truth. The reason I left the show is because 44 years was long enough for me to wait for Oscar the Grouch to propose. A woman's got to do what a woman's got to do to retain her self-respect. I had a great run on Sesame Street, and I'll never forget the first time I saw it. I was a student at Carnegie Mellon University in 1969, and I walked into the student union, Carnegie Mellon people here. I walked into the student union, and there on the television set was a very young, very bald James Earl Jones reciting the alphabet in a very deliberate manner. A, B, C, while the letters flashed over his bald head. Well, I thought I was watching a show that taught lip reading. It was the most compelling television I had ever seen. But then I really flipped when they cut to an animated film of a zany witch called Wanda, who sounded just like Gracie Slick of the great rock and roll group Jefferson Airplane. Well, it turned out that Wanda the Witch had indeed been voiced by Gracie Slick of Jefferson Airplane. And the show went on to amaze me with more wildly creative films and animation, such as a kid in Appalachia waiting for the mail to be brought to her via a donkey, or two Watusi warriors gazing over the African savannah to illustrate the number 2. And of course, Jim Henson's famous crazy pinball animation starring the number 8. These were images and sounds artistically designed and created not only to teach a number or a letter, but to expand the viewer's mind, to make children see a bigger world and come to their own observations and conclusions about it. There was an understanding that art affects adults, therefore it also affects children. And I know how that works, because art affected me when I was a child growing up in the South Bronx. I was raised in a household ruled by domestic violence. Yet, the movie West Side Story put me on higher ground. That movie made banal images I was surrounded with that I saw in my neighborhood every day beautiful. Suddenly, I saw a common, ordinary schoolyard fence as an art object with such a beautiful repeating pattern that it made me pause. The movie lit the makeshift altar on the character Maria's bureau so beautifully, I took a closer look at the artifacts in my own local church. And of course, the movie made the suggestion that a fire escape was a place where important decisions were made, not just a place for me and my friends to mischievously drop water balloons onto the heads of unsuspecting pedestrians below. As a kid, I could not change my circumstance of domestic violence, but I could step out of it long enough to catch my breath. Sadly, these days, art dominates a smaller and smaller part of the American landscape, and even a smaller and smaller part of a child's education. Why has art taken such a back seat? I think it's because we have become a coarse, data-driven society. Nowadays, children are assessed and analyzed and tested before even experiencing the joys of thinking and imagining. In schools, we say we want them to have ideas and think outside the box, yet we penalize them when they don't come up with the right answers that we provide. On Sesame Street, we didn't only teach cognitive skills, there were subtle messages we were interested in broadcasting as well. I'll never forget the day I got to the studio and I see the great singer, actor, activist, Lena Horne, singing "It's Not Easy Being Green" with Kermit the Frog. I remember thinking, are they singing about what I think they're singing about? The song was about race, self-acceptance, sharing, and love. And it was also about how tough it was being a little green Muppet. It was open-ended, allowing the viewer to come to his or her own conclusions. I don't believe it's possible to test the lesson of that segment. Let's remember that arts might be the last place that children can dream, speculate, ponder, and muse. We cannot ask kids to think outside the box without first exposing them to art, to use their inborn imagination and free their minds. We are living in such harsh, unsympathetic times. People aren't happy to win elections. They have to kick the defeated in the head as well. Defunding art initiatives is part of their little extra kick. Still, I must remain hopeful. Art has played a major part in the American landscape in other administrations. In my lifetime, I remember President Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy when they hosted the great cellist Pablo Casals at the White House, giving art, in essence, the universal stamp of American approval. After signing the Civil Rights Bill, even President Johnson, believe it or not, went on to create the Great Society, or want to create the Great Society, giving rise to many social programs, including Head Start. And let's not forget that Lin-Manuel Miranda tried out one of his tunes for Hamilton in the White House, so things can go that way. I can tell you that people of goodwill, such as yourselves, have always come to the aid of children, and I'm sure that you will continue to do so. And when people ask me about feeling hopeless, I remember the lines that James Baldwin said in that wonderful documentary about his life, "I Am Not Your Negro," and he said, because I am alive, I must remain hopeful. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.